faithfully delivering value and decoding great books from around the world. Hi, this is Sally with the Book Talk. Today, we're breaking down the book Business Warfare for you. New businesses pop up in the market every single day, and many originally strong enterprises just vanish. Every business, wants to survive in the market. But business competition is brutal, and only a tiny few companies achieve long lasting success. So, how do these surviving companies stand out in the cutthroat competition? And how do those giant enterprises at the top of the industry food chain solidify their positions to stay unbeatable? Is there any pattern behind all this to follow? Today, the book Business Warfare I'm sharing might just answer those questions for you. This book was first published back in 1986, over 30 years ago from today. It first proposed that business is war and the enemy is your competitor. Even though that idea is over 30 years old, many business strategies in the book still feel fresh and lively. The authors are two guys, Ries and Jack Trout, who are pretty much legends in marketing strategy. Ries is the chairman of Ries Partners Marketing Company and was named one of the world's top 10 business masters by Advertising Age. Jack Trout is hailed as the father of positioning. His positioning theory was rated by the American Marketing Association as the most influential concept ever in the US. Another book they co-wrote, Positioning, is also considered a classic by many. Fu Sheng, the founder of Cheetah Mobile, has talked about business warfare in multiple settings and calls it a must-read for CEOs. The book Business Warfare has 16 chapters, mainly covering two big principles and four strategic models of business warfare. First up, let's dive into the two major principles, the principle of force and the principle of defensive advantage. The principle of force is the most basic of all war principles. Its core is the natural law of survival of the fittest. Big fish eat small fish. Big companies swallow small ones. In market competition, big companies can afford higher ad budgets, have more stores and sales teams, so they grab bigger market share. Just like in war, where having more troops boosts your odds of winning. In business warfare, companies with more forces also have a better shot at victory. We often hear managers from startups claiming their products are excellent enough to directly disrupt giant corporations. Actually, this kind of thinking is quite irrational, with almost zero chance of success. For small businesses, only by firmly remembering the principle of force and accepting reality can they make sound judgments, instead of blindly competing head-on with big companies. The second principle in business warfare is the principle of defensive advantage. What it means is that in any war, the advantage often belongs to the defending side. Without absolute superiority in force, it's hard for the attacker to gain an edge over the defender. To win, you need at least 3 times the opponent's troops at the attack point. Same goes for business warfare. After grasping the two major principles of business warfare, let's dive into the 4 strategic models, the essence of this book. The authors believe there are 4 strategies in business warfare: defensive warfare, offensive warfare, flanking warfare, and guerrilla warfare. These 4 strategic models correspond to 4 types of companies at different stages, helping them make optimal decisions in intense competition. Which strategy a company should choose depends on its position and strength in the competitive market. Any strategic model serves different purposes for different companies. Before crafting a strategy, managers must constantly ask themselves, where does my company rank in the industry? Generally, in a competitive market of 100 companies, only 1 should fight defensive warfare, 2, offensive warfare, 3, flanking warfare, and the remaining 94 should use guerrilla warfare. Next up, I'll walk you through these 4 strategic models one by one. The star of the first type, defensive warfare, is the market leader. In every category, There's a dominant player like Taobao in e-commerce or Apple in smartphones. Facing challenges from rivals, these leaders must execute defensive warfare well to maintain their top spot. Defensive warfare might seem easy, but it's actually tough to pull off. The key is to follow three basic principles. The first principle of defensive warfare is that only market leaders are qualified to fight it. Note that it's about leaders, not just front runners. In the market, there can be many front runners, but the leader is unique. Like in the computer industry, Dell, HP, etc., are all front runners. But there's only one leader, and that's IBM. It's the true leader in the minds of computer users and potential customers. The real leader in people's minds is the only one who can use defensive warfare strategies. So, before setting strategies, companies in the market must first position and judge themselves to have clear self awareness. Only after confirming you're the leader should you think about defensive warfare. The second principle of defensive warfare is to conduct self attacks, because as a leader, the company already holds a strong position in customers' minds. The best way to solidify your position is to constantly self attack. In other words, it's about continuously launching new products or services to replace existing ones. These are methods to strengthen leadership through self attacks. We're all familiar with iPhones. You'll notice Apple periodically releases new models with innovations in performance and design, making it harder for competitors to catch up. Self attacking might sacrifice some short term gains, but in the long run, the biggest benefit is protecting your market share. So, without the courage to self attack, you'll usually lose market share and eventually lose your leadership position. The third principle of defensive warfare is to always be ready to block attackers' strong marketing offensives. Many leaders are reluctant to block competitors, which shows arrogance. By the time they want to counter, it's already too late. Many have probably heard of Pinduoduo. This company became a phenomenon in e-commerce in 2018, sparking intense market attention and discussion. You might have heard that catchy jingle on TV. When Pinduoduo was just gaining traction, Taobao, the leader in China's e-commerce market, didn't pay enough attention. By the time they reacted, Pinduoduo had become a successful shopping app used by 300 million people. It listed in the US. Although it didn't immediately threaten Taobao's leadership, it still gave Taobao a scare. The Taobao and Pinduoduo example isn't isolated. Leaders must always stay prepared and ready to counterattack to win defensive warfare. In reality, business warfare is everywhere, but very few companies actually hold leadership positions. Besides defensive strategies for these companies, the authors also proposed three different offensive models for catching up businesses. They are offensive warfare model, flanking warfare model, and guerrilla warfare model. If your company is in second or third place in the market and has enough strength to launch sustained attacks against the leader, then the most suitable strategic model is offensive warfare. Compared to defensive warfare, offensive warfare is even tougher. Most offensive campaigns end in failure. In a 2-year survey of 600 companies, only 20% increased their market share by 2% or more. In other words, 80% saw minimal gains or even lost market share. According to the principle of force and defensive advantage we mentioned earlier, companies ranked second or third trying to overtake the leader head-on across a broad front is a losing battle. Without absolute advantage, companies launching offenses must first fully understand the leader's strengths, find weaknesses within them, and attack those weak points. These are the two basic principles of offensive warfare. Let's use an auto industry example to understand these two offensive principles. Oh, many people love Mercedes-Benz. Their cars are super spacious and comfortable. For years, it's been a major leader in the mid to high-end car market. Back then, BMW was the weaker player in that market compared to Mercedes. Had BMW copied Mercedes' positioning, it would have had almost no chance of winning head to head. Fortunately, BMW realized this and made smaller, nimbler cars to compete. Through constant marketing, BMW branded their cars as the ultimate driving machine. This tagline successfully countered Mercedes' comfort focus, a hugely successful offensive campaign with lasting impact. Even today, many still say, drive a BMW, ride in a Mercedes. This idea, after this offensive campaign, BMW's car sales surpassed Mercedes in the US, globally, and many other countries. Besides fully understanding the leader's strengths, finding weaknesses within them and attacking offensive warfare has another crucial principle. Launch attacks on as narrow a front as possible. Many companies pursue being big and comprehensive, but only leaders can afford this big and comprehensive strategy. If a company tries to invest in multiple products on a very broad front to grab as much market share as possible, it not only struggles to succeed, but might even lose its original share. Because leaders always have absolute power advantages: finances, resources, industry ties, distribution channels, or customer perception. Offensive companies can only succeed by maximizing resource focus on a narrow front. In warfare, offense and defense are natural occurrences. So, besides these two frontal strategies, are there others suited for smaller companies? Of course there is. This strategy is flanking warfare. Flanking warfare is meant for weaker companies. To avoid head-on clashes with stronger rivals, they choose to enter sideways to gain market share. Simply put, it means I'm not as strong as you, not as rich or resource-packed. Hey, if I can't beat you head-on, I'll flank you bit by bit and nibble away your market. Many might think flanking warfare is just a military idea with little practical value in business. But in reality, it's a highly innovative strategy in business war, sometimes surprisingly effective, even helping beat leaders. Let's take a ready example. In summer, when eating hot pot or barbecue, many folks order a can of Wang Laoji herbal tea. Actually, Wang Laoji was once a small beverage brand with sales under 1 billion yuan, lukewarm for years, only in cities like Guangzhou. Bigger shares went to giants like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Master Kong, and Uni-President. The turning point came in 2002. The food service market has always been a key battleground for beverage brands. The leader at that time was undoubtedly Coca-Cola. It had a powerful food service channel that covered almost all types of restaurants. Wang Laji spent heavily to seize Coca-Cola's food service channels, but Coca-Cola didn't immediately block it because Wang Laji avoided direct confrontation and instead chose a flanking route to launch a flanking attack. At that time, spicy cuisine centered around hot pot wasn't popular yet, and the spicy food channel wasn't a main market for cola. Wang Laoji saw the big future trend of spicy cuisine, believed it would boom, and decided to enter from this flank. People who eat spicy food all fear getting heaty, shun hu. So Wang Laoji introduced the concept: afraid of getting heaty? Drink Wang Laoji, quickly capturing countless hot pot restaurants and spicy eateries. As hot pot, Sichuan cuisine, and other spicy foods grew popular, Wang Laoji's market share expanded. By the time Coca-Cola reacted, it was already too late. By 2008, Wang Laoji herbal tea's annual sales exceeded 12 billion yuan, surpassing Coca-Cola to become China's top-selling beverage brand. Thus, a successful flanking attack can be tremendously helpful for a company. So, how can you launch a successful flanking attack? 3 principles matter: compete in uncontested areas, strike quickly and unexpectedly, and have the ability to pursue victory and secure gains. Every company's situation differs. Industries vary, so businesses can launch flanking attacks from different entry points. But this entry point must be an undefended or weakly defended battleground. Just like we wouldn't airdrop scattered soldiers onto enemy machine gun nests, companies shouldn't send products into markets firmly held by others. If Wang Laojie had made cola instead of herbal tea back then, it would have vanished without a trace. At its core, flanking warfare is a surprise tactic. When Steve Jobs was alive, all Apple products were strictly confidential before launch. When the iPhone launched, almost all competitors, including industry leaders, thought it couldn't succeed. But as touchscreen phones grew popular, former leaders like Nokia and Motorola finally realized their mistake. After that, Apple pursued victory relentlessly, launching multiple new products one after another, firmly securing and gradually consolidating its market share. By the time Nokia and others wanted to reposition themselves, it was already too late. Although flanking warfare can sometimes achieve miraculous effects, but if your resources aren't enough and you can't sustain the victory, what should you do? This situation can easily occur in many fields, and there are many such examples in business history. These flanking attacks started successfully, but ultimately failed, mainly due to lack of funds, unable to maintain victory to the end. At this point, the best strategy is guerrilla warfare. In fact, the vast majority of companies should use guerrilla warfare. The biggest difference between guerrilla warfare and flanking warfare, in choosing the battlefield, guerrilla warfare doesn't look for an open, uncontested area, but rather a niche market. And this niche market must be small enough to defend. This is the first principle of guerrilla warfare. For example, the famous car brand Rolls-Royce is a company very skilled at guerrilla warfare in the automotive industry. It completely dominates the market for cars priced over $100,000. This market was too small, so small that no one wanted to compete with Rolls-Royce at the time. Besides finding a niche market small enough to defend, guerrilla warfare has another important principle. No matter how successful you are, never act like a leader. Unlike large enterprises with tight organization and numerous staff, guerrilla-style companies need a lean organization and quick, agile responses. We rarely hear of any company failing because it concentrated its forces on a very small market. On the contrary, we often hear of many companies splitting due to overexpansion. Some companies, after achieving some success, immediately invest in various products in more markets, eager to become a Fortune Global 500 overnight. These are very dangerous practices. So, except for leaders, most companies are not suitable for doing this. And the third principle of guerrilla warfare is to be ready to retreat at any sign of failure. If the battle situation is unfavorable to you, don't hesitate. Quickly abandon your position or product. Guerrillas don't have so much, financial and human resources to waste on battles that are already lost. The best approach is to abandon the war as soon as possible. Temporary retreat, small boats turn easily, is the guerrillas' advantage, greatly boosting their combat speed and helping them make quicker decisions to adapt to market shifts. Compared to big businesses, this is a precious asset because big companies often take much longer to make decisions. As long as the green hills remain, there'll be no shortage of firewood. No matter how small a company is, as long as it survives, it has a chance to keep competing. That covers the 4 strategic models from the book Business Warfare. Finally, let me share a case study from the book to help understand these 4 models. This case is the Cola War, starring the familiar rivals Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Coca-Cola, the cola pioneer, holds the market leader position and primarily fights defensive warfare. Pepsi, as a rising star, has always aimed to seize Coca-Cola's leadership and focuses on offensive warfare. Early in the Cola War, Pepsi's strategy was to first fight a flanking attack using low prices against Coca-Cola. Back then, Pepsi shouted, "Twice as much for a nickel," quickly grabbing market share and escalating it to offensive warfare. As market leader, Coca-Cola responded lightning fast. When Pepsi went low price, Coca-Cola countered with price cuts too. And then Pepsi leveraged offensive warfare principles. Find a weakness in the leader's strengths and attack it. So they analyzed and concluded Coca-Cola's hardest to change strength was its contoured bottle. Beloved, but growth limiting. Since they had no large bottles, Pepsi quickly launched big bottles to attack. Immediately, Coca-Cola countered with its own large bottles. At this point, Pepsi realized packaging wasn't Coca-Cola's truly unchangeable aspect. What they really couldn't change was their authentic branding. By always claiming authenticity, they seemed old-fashioned. Pepsi immediately pivoted, heavily promoting itself as the choice of a new generation, successfully capturing market share and drawing even with Coca-Cola. Besides Coca-Cola and Pepsi, Royal Crown Cola, ranked third, also joined this battle in the 1960s. But Royal Crown Cola fought a flanking attack. They launched an all-new Diet Right Cola focused on health, which ended up being a huge success and securing their spot. Unfortunately, Royal Crown's later strategies were unstable. They failed to follow flanking warfare's third principle, pressing the advantage, and let Coca-Cola and Pepsi retake the market. Even today, this cola war continues. Who will be the final victor remains unknown. And that uncertainty is precisely the charm of business warfare. All right, that wraps up our breakdown of business warfare. Keynotes are below the audio. See you tomorrow.